Oh my gosh, this again? From Slate. An author canceled her own YA novel over accusations of racism. But is it really anti-black? So, in my last video, I mentioned the cancellation of The Black Witch because some readers read it, didn't like it, just called it racist because they didn't like the main character and they didn't like the story arc. Well, here we have it happening again. This actually just happened earlier this week. It was published on January 31st, this article, and we'll get into this. On Wednesday, Amelia Wen Zhao, author of the upcoming YA fantasy novel Blood Heir, announced that she asked her publisher, De La Corte Press, not to publish the book at this time. Blood Heir was born from a Twitter pitching event for marginalized creators, and it secured Zhao both an agent and eventually a six-figure book deal. The novel was going to be published in June, but amid rumors of racial insensitivity and, to a lesser extent, plagiarism, Zhao ultimately issued an apology and put her debut on an indefinite hold. Why is this happening? So, one of the things that I see a lot is the writing community on Twitter and everywhere else kind of goes, let's support each other. I want to see other people's success. But really, when you start looking at stuff, especially in the YA genre, it seems like there are a lot of really jealous people and a lot of really jealous backstabbers that just want to take the air out of your sails. Like, this book was taken down because a Twitter mob went after a woman claiming racism. And you'll see why. We've got people claiming that all of slavery belongs to just black people and that it is cultural appropriation to write about some kind of slavery because clearly only black people have ever faced slavery. Please, can we stop this garbage nonsense? Number two, you're writing fiction. You can write about whatever the freak you want. We have books about Abraham Lincoln being a vampire slayer. You can write whatever you want about slavery. You can write whatever you want about any color of people. It's fiction. And it is not your job to be the curator of YA fiction or any fiction because you don't think that it's written the way that you want it to be written or received. And this is garbage. And I think Amelia Wen Zhao should not have backed down. She should have told these people, frick, no. And unfortunately, a lot of people, once they get that kickback from a handful of people, they just back out because they're going to get mobbed. And that's the one thing that you cannot do is you cannot apologize to these people and you cannot back down. Let's continue and see what the problem really was here. The controversy surrounding Blood Heir has since spread outside the impassioned YA community, with some supporting Zhao's decision, others decrying it was the result of a Twitter mob. Here's a guide to what happened so you can decide for yourself. What is Blood Heir about? Blood Heir, or maybe I should say was, the first book in an intended fantasy trilogy. The story is a loose retelling of Anastasia, only with the magic and more racially diverse characters. In the fictional Scythian Empire, Princess Anastasia Mikhailov has been forced to live in secrecy because she shares the same blood and power as the Empire's enslaved population, affinities. When Anna is framed for her father's death, she sets out to find her father's killer. So first off, let's take a moment to think about how funny it is that she canceled the book because she was accused of racism and cultural appropriation. She's an Asian, taking a Russian folklore mythology, Anastasia, but she wasn't mobbed for being Asian and writing about Russians. She was mobbed for being an Asian writing about slavery. Because black people. Are you freaking kidding me? So why are people so mad about it? In a nutshell, some YA influencers in the Twitterverse accused Zhao of racial insensitivity, among other things. This led both to a Twitter storm and one-star Goodreads reviews, including one in particular that accuses the novel of anti-blackness. Now, I can't show you that review because you click in and it's either deleted or the person who wrote it set their thing to private. Hold on, what is a YA influencer exactly? There are YA authors and fans with substantial followings who are attuned to trends in young adult fiction and often push for better representation and diversity within the genre. I would call that not people who are attuned to trends in young adult fiction, but I would call them dictators trying to decide what is allowed in YA fiction. They are trying to determine what you're allowed to publish and what you're allowed to talk about and how you're allowed to write about certain stories or certain people or certain races. That's not following trends. That's enforcing rules that you created. Two different things. Some of them receive advanced readers' copies or ARCs so that they could preview books similar to professional critics before they're published. All I gotta say is, YA authors, especially if you're writing fantasy of some kind, mythology, which there is a lot of it, I would avoid these people. I would avoid giving these people advanced reader copies because they seem to be the worst dictators that I have found in the writing community, period. They don't want you to be creative. They want you to fall in line with what they say is okay to write. How did the Blood Heir controversy begin? It's hard to pinpoint an exact moment, but last week, Twitter user Legally Page accused Zhao of compiling screenshots of people who weren't fans of Blood Heir ahead of its release and harassing them. I'll tell you which 2019 debut author, according to the Whisper Network, has been gathering screenshots of people who didn't like her book and giving off Kathleen Hale vibes, Amelia Wen Zhao. At Legally Page has since made her account private. So we can't even verify if that's true. If one, she was collecting screenshots, and two, if she was actually harassing people. I want to go with no, because there's no evidence of it. There would be screenshots of the harassment if it was happening. And I kind of don't believe any of this. Let's start a shitstorm and then privatize my stuff so nobody can talk to me. I don't tend to believe those people. This opened the floodgates, with others accusing Zhao of plagiarism, of her book being offensive, and of her book being offensive to African Americans. YA novelist L.L. McKinney voiced her displeasure with this particular description of the book. In a world where the princess is a monster, oppression is blind to color, and good and evil exist in shades of gray, comes a dark Anastasia retelling that explores love, loss, fear, and divisiveness, and how ultimately it is our choices that define who we are. I don't see a problem with that description, do you? The description led McKinney to also state that the book was pretty much about the oppression and slavery faced by the African American community. Show me some examples. Quote, explain to me how you wrote a book pretty much about slavery and oppression suffered by the black community, such as a system that used not only slaves but people arrested by authoritative systems in place to be used as relatively free labor, but oppression is blind. Excuse me? Are you completely neglecting Stalin and how he treated his own people? Are you completely neglecting the slavery that happened to Eastern Europeans by their own leadership? Are you completely ignoring the slavery that happened to every human race that's ever been alive? It is not a black thing to be subjected to slavery and to be used as free labor. You cannot claim that as, oh, my culture, it's just black people. Author Ellen O, known for the Prophecy series, also made comments that seemed aimed at Zhao and later applauded Zhao for canceling the publication. Quote, Dear POC writers, you are not immune to charges of racism just because you are a POC. Racism is systematic, especially anti-blackness, and colorblindness is extremely tone-deaf. Learn from this and do better. You know, first they say, didn't Martin Luther King Jr. say, I live for the day that we can judge people based on their quality of their character and not their skin? And now they're going, well, if you're colorblind, then you're a problem? Isn't that the exact opposite of what their dear Lord Martin Luther King Jr. said? What is the answer here? Do you want people to be judged on their character, or do you want people to be judged on their skin color? Because people like Ellen O here sound like they're saying judge on skin color, and this is the hierarchy of what makes you a god. How did Zoe respond to the uproar? Well, as you would guess, Zoe posted an apology on Twitter in which she revealed she asked her publisher to hold off on publishing Blood Heir. I mean, just go for it. For real. They're mad because you're making six figures and you got published. Just ignore them. They're angry and they're jealous. And they always will be. Because they're vindictive. And then it says, to the book community, an apology, and it links to her Twitter. Whoa, so the accusations are true? Well, after actually reading Blood Heir, we're not entirely convinced. Look, it's bullshit. Is there any merit to the plagiarism charge? Barely. The main basis for such an accusation seems to be a line in Chapter 21. The main protagonist, Anna, tells her dying friend May, don't, Anna was crying freely, don't go where I can't follow you. The quote is identical to a popular Tolkien quote from the second Lord of the Rings book, in which Sam begs Frodo to wake up. Don't leave me here alone. It's your Sam calling. Don't go where I can't follow. But as others have noted, the idea is rooted in the Bible, and the same style, I would say the same kind of phrasing, the same kind of idea and situation and setup has been used a bunch of times. Is that it? Not quite. A few people have also pointed out similarities to the Hunger Games. In Blood Heir, Anna sings May's beloved childhood song to her as May dies. In the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen sings her own childhood songs as her young black friend Rue dies. Also, like Rue's burial in the Hunger Games, Anna buries May surrounded by flowers. That seems like pretty common tropes. But you said people were mad about racial insensitivity. So let's go over these tropes really quick. I recently went to Bok Tower, and let me tell you, the dude who designed Bok Tower was buried right in front of the front door, covered in flowers. Let me also tell you, in my first novel manuscript, not published yet, the gardener, because it's set in a mansion, when he kills the heiress's boyfriends, every time he kills one, he buries them in the garden and puts a certain flower over their grave. And then eventually when he dies, his heir buries him and puts those seeds over his grave. It is not that unique to bury somebody around flowers. Flowers always follow with death, even if you go to a funeral. So that's number one. Number two, singing to somebody as they die is also a very common trope. You cannot copyright these tropes. It is not plagiarism to use these ideas. Calm the frick down. Hunger Games was not the first to do those. People were mad about racial insensitivity, right? The issue that has most inflamed YA Twitter is the alleged racial insensitivity towards the black community. Influencers are saying that the book shows a black girl being rescued from the slave trade and subsequently dying so that the white protagonist can live. That sounds like a bummer. Agreed, however, the interpretation may not be correct. Why not? Well, for starters, we're not even really sure for the character in question, if the character in question, May, is black. This reminds me so much of the outrage that happened I saw a year or two ago? With people saying that you're not allowed to use women in comics if it just moves the story forward. So they were getting mad if, let's imagine the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, where the guy's mom dies of cancer. Well, that's apparently not allowed anymore because you're not allowed to let female characters die to move the story forward. This is garbage. You can't tell an author who they can and can't kill. Especially you can't go, oh, you can't kill them because they're black. The black people have to always exist. Excuse me. Go write your own stories. Not to mention this says that they don't even know if the character is black. This is a great way to never have black characters in anybody's book ever. Because then they're going to worry about you dictating what they're allowed to do with that character. After reading a few descriptions of the character, it's difficult to be 100% certain, but May is described several times as having ocean blue eyes or aquamarine eyes. Her skin is initially described as bronze and then tan on a second reference. Her brown curls are also not necessarily indicative of a particular race. No, and if she's just bronze or tan, she's likely more of a Latin race or it could be an Asian race of some kind, though she's got some curly hair. It could also be a Mediterranean woman because they are tan with dark brown hair. So what about the slavery aspect? In her apologies, Al explained the issue around affinite indenturement in the story represents a specific critique of the epidemic of indentured labor and human trafficking prevalent in many industries across Asia, including in my own home country. The narrative and history of slavery in the United States is not something I can, would, or intended to write, but I recognize that I am not writing in merely my own cultural context. I am so sorry for the pain this has caused. So she was writing about her own culture that she's familiar with, the own history that she's familiar with, the slavery and trafficking that still happens in parts of Asia today. But American audiences on Twitter decided, I'm going to associate that with America and black people because black people are the only ones that have ever suffered slavery. This is garbage. Are you kidding me? You're attacking an Asian woman from another country for talking and incorporating her own culture into a story. Slavery isn't anybody's to own. Slavery isn't a badge that just one race can wear from one geographical location? Are you insane? So the author has said that American slavery trade was not the inspiration and the characters might not even be black. Correct. Does that mean that Zhao stalled the publication of her book over false claims? That still depends on your point of view. McKinney maintains that the book perpetuates anti-blackness even after all this, but it is not false claims, then maybe claims driven by passion rather than facts. As the overwhelming white publishing industry pushes towards more inclusive and socially aware storytelling, public scrutiny has only gotten harsher. While it is important to hold both industries accountable and push for greater progress, it's important to make sure that these claims are truly valid. It's its own beast. They're saying, let's be more inclusive, while also attacking an Asian woman writing about Asians. Considering that she's from another country, she mentioned using the slave trades from Asia as part of her inspiration. I would imagine that her character up here is inspired by some Asian and Western ideas, not black people. I just can't wrap my head around the insanity of people claiming that blacks own slavery as theirs and anybody else is culturally appropriating and being anti-black because they're associating slavery with somebody that's not black. Are you kidding me? That's insanity. Why does this situation sound so familiar? Hey, look! Because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. In 2017, the novel called The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest famously faced major backlash and accusations of racism prior to its release. The novel follows a girl named Eleanor who was raised to believe other fictional races were inferior to her own. However, she begins to question those beliefs, ultimately joining a rebellion to fight back. Like Blood Heir, the book was meant to be a first in the series, but quickly called out for the comments made by racist characters. This led to a flurry of angry Twitter comments and one-star reviews, some of which were based on out-of-context quotes that were shared online. So what's next for Zhao? While the future of Blood Heir series is in particular is uncertain, Zhao's relationship with her publishing house seems to be in good standing, at least publicly. In a statement to the New York Times, Random House children's book Della Corte's parents company said, "We respect Amelia's decision and look forward to continuing on publishing relationship with her." So while my last video talked about moral clauses with the publisher canceling on you, Random House actually didn't cancel on this woman. She actually got scared because the YA Twitterverse decided to attack her. Because I think there's a mixture of jealousy because she got 6 figures, she's succeeding, and she's doing what they tell her that she can't do. A lot of this verse in America say that if you're a minority, you can't succeed. Well, this woman got a publishing deal for 6 figures and her book series in YA, and they're jealous. She is succeeding. She's about to live comfy, so they go after her. It's also this level of censorship where you have to write what they tell you to write or you're not allowed to get published. Oh, you went around the Twitterverse? I don't know why people on Twitter think they have so much power and so much authority. We just saw the media, the media has been using Twitter to circumvent power to themselves for years. And now these randos on Twitter are also doing it in the publishing community when they're not publishers, they're not agents, they're not even high-level book reviewers or anything. Some of them are just other authors, and it just feels like jealousy and vengeance because they don't like to see somebody else succeed, because they want to stab somebody who's a competitor in the back, as we saw with Ellen O is already an author in YA fantasy. I don't know what it is. Those are my guesses. But this is ridiculous, and people need to not back down when they're running into these problems. It's not going to stop. They're going to see that they can intimidate you, and they're going to keep pushing you until you back down, and then they're going to try to change your story if you publish it. Just don't. Laura Forrest, after all her controversy, continued to publish her book, and she's fine. People are going to dislike your book. Whatever. If there's no merit to what they're saying, if they go, hey, this book is racist, what are you doing? And you go, it was designed and described with my experience and cultural history. Screw off. That's all you can do. If they're not going to like your book, they're not going to like your book. But other people will like your book. Obviously, somebody liked your book because they want to pay you 6 figures for it. Don't trust these people. They want to see you miserable. They don't want to help you. And if this continual assault, especially in YA fantasy, is not proof enough that they don't want to help you, then you're just going to have to wait until they come for you. You can do everything right. It just mentioned in The Black Witch that she started out racist, and then through the story and decision making, she realizes that it was wrong to treat other races in her fictional world poorly. You can do everything right. You can write a good story. You can have character development. You can do everything. But if you don't do it how they want you to, they will never help you. And this is all about intimidation. This is all about controlling the narrative. And this is all about people who don't have the skill or don't have the attention trying to push their beliefs and their style through controlling other people. Because they want to maintain power, they want to maintain control, and they want to get more of it. And they'll do it through intimidating you. So, Miss Zhao, I hope that you push forward. I don't read YA fiction. I don't read YA fantasy especially. It's probably my least favorite genre. But I wish you the best. I hope that you push forward and have this book published without changing anything, because I think a lot of people will enjoy it. So let me know what you think about this story in the comments below, and I hope to see you soon on better terms than this.